Hello, 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 and welcome to the space between ideas and blankets. Let's jump right into the work. So, this down to it's the same day as the previous video. Let's start with this idea here, and I'm going to check the audio at the same time.
You raise a good practical question about how best to load the context into a new chat window. Here's a comparison of the two approaches. 1. Combining into one large markdown file. Pro. Simpler for you. Only one copy-paste action is needed. Cons. Creates a very large initial input. While I can handle long contexts, processing a single massive block might slightly increase the chance of nuanced details from the very beginning being less prominent compared to information loaded later in the block. It's also harder to structure distinct logical units clearly within one giant file compared to separate files. 2. Pasting the 5 files one by one, sequentially. Pros. This method breaks the information into logical, digestible chunks. It allows the AI in the new window to process each part sequentially, building understanding step by step. Overview first, then structure, workflow, then specs, then plan, then process. This often leads to a more robust internal representation of the context. It mirrors a more natural way of providing information. Cons. Requires slightly more effort from you. 5 copy-paste actions instead of 1. Recommendation. While combining them might work, pasting the files one by one, in the order we defined, is generally the recommended and likely more effective approach. Why? Sequential context building. It helps ensure the foundational concepts are processed before the more detailed or strategic information is introduced, leading to potentially better understanding by the AI. Logical chunking. It clearly separates the distinct aspects of the project: overview, structure, specs, plan, process, for the AI. Robustness. It's arguably a more robust way to ensure all information is ingested and weighted appropriately within the AI's context window, especially as projects grow more complex over time. The small extra effort of pasting 5 times seems worthwhile to maximize the chances that the new chat instance starts with the clearest possible understanding of the project context we've carefully built. So, I recommend sticking with the plan to provide the content of the 5 markdown files sequentially when priming a new chat session.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this last post. We just open up a new context window. And then we're going to say, I recommend sticking to the plan of providing the content of the 5 markdown files sequentially when priming a new chat session. Now it's going to be like, what markdown files? What are you talking about? All right, so on the other screen, I'm just opening up these docs. It's not so difficult. How long does it take? Well, we know exactly how long it takes because I can see the time on my YouTube video. All right, so I got the 5 documents open. Just like last time. So you might want to skip ahead. Maybe it's going to take me like 2 minutes to do this, probably. I take the first one, I copy it and put it in here. I'm curious about this will the audio work?
Okay, I've reviewed the project overview for the management guidance application. This gives a clear picture of the application's purpose: to provide a simple, structured thinking tool for new to mid-level managers using a question-based methodology across 5 core modules: vision, objective, touch base, brainstorm, choose, with the objective module leading to a scoreboard, task list. The goal is to reduce overwhelm and enhance manager effectiveness, potentially incorporating AI for brainstorming. Understanding this overall goal, the target audience, and the core VOS TBC methodology provides excellent context. This foundation will be very helpful when we start discussing aspects like data structures needed to store information for each module, V, O, S, T, B, C. The flow and logic between these modules.
All right, that's weird. I wish that it could finish reading the text as it's doing the other job at the same time. You know, the funny thing is people who watch this YouTube video in like 50 years from now, they're just going to be like, man, those guys had no idea what they were doing. They were just playing around. Because obviously the next version, like the next world of coding, like I watched the latest YC video, and there's this one presenter, he says like it's changing the concept of software as a service, and it's going to move from somebody has to dream up, think
Okay,
up.
I've reviewed the application structure and workflow document. This adds significant detail to the initial overview. Here's my understanding. 1. Navigation. The user flow is clearly defined. Log in to projects page, list of all projects, to select project to modules page, hub for VOS TBC within that project. 2. UI structure. You've described the key UI elements and layout for the projects page, creating, managing projects, and the modules page, accessing VOS TBC modules and viewing their history for the selected project. The descriptions reference visual layouts, which is helpful. 3. Data structure. Important considerations are highlighted, such as separating user and project data, the relationship hierarchy, user to project to module instance to scoreboard, and the need to explicitly manage the display order of projects and history items. 4. Workflows. The core operational loops are defined. How a user determines the next objective, directly or via brainstorm, choose, the execution loop for managing a scoreboard using touch-based sessions, the outer loop for progressing through multiple objectives within a single project's vision. How this informs coding. UI development. The descriptions of the projects and modules pages provide direct input for designing and coding the front-end components. We know what buttons, lists, and sections are needed. Back-end, data modeling. The data structure considerations and relationships, user, project, module instance, scoreboard, tasks, are crucial for designing the database schema or defining data models in code, e.g., classes in an object-oriented language. The need for explicit ordering fields is a key requirement. Application logic. The defined workflow loops dictate the core logic that needs to be implemented, handling transitions between states, e.g., identifying an objective, working through a scoreboard, completing an objective, moving to the next. This second document provides a solid blueprint for the application's structure and behavior. I'm ready for the next piece of information, or we could start discussing specific implementation details now, such as drafting the data models.
Yes. All right, so this is the detailed module specifications.
Okay, I've reviewed the detailed module specifications document. This provides the specific content and structure for each of the core modules. Here's my understanding. 1. Module content. You've listed the precise questions or prompts for vision. 5 questions focused on high-level strategy. Objective. 7 questions for defining the goal and planning, linking step definition to scoreboard tasks. Touch base. 7 questions for check-ins, including specific prompts to update the scoreboard. Brainstorm. 5 thematic areas: imitate, ideate, ignore, integrate, interfere, for idea generation. Choose, a 5-step process for evaluating and selecting options. 2. Scoreboard structure. The scoreboard is defined as a table with specific columns: task, status, dropdown, person, and date. 3. General UI. A common pattern for module screens is mentioned: header, back arrow, questions, prompts with input fields. How this informs coding. UI design. This document gives us the exact text labels and the number, type of input fields required for each module screen. We know precisely what needs to be displayed and captured from the user. The scoreboard description defines that specific UI component's requirements. Data modeling. We now have a clear idea of the data points that need to be stored for each saved instance of a module. For example, a Vision instance record would need fields to store the answers to its 5 questions. An Objective instance would store its answers, and importantly, its output would link to or generate records in a Scoreboard tasks table collection. The scoreboard itself requires storing task descriptions, statuses, assignees, and dates. Application logic. The flow where Objective Question 2 populates the scoreboard needs to be implemented. Similarly, the logic connecting the touchbase prompts, questions 5, 6, 7, to actions that modify the scoreboard, updating status, adding, deleting tasks, changing dates, is now clearly defined. This document is crucial for building the core user interface and data persistence layers of the application. I'm ready for the next document, or we could dive into coding tasks based on this, such as designing the database schema, data models for module instances and the scoreboard. Creating the UI mockups or components for one of the modules, e.g., the Vision module screen. Let me know the next step.
No, I don't know. I'm not really happy about this situation with the images, because it still doesn't actually have access to the images. And I can't select them. All right. Weird. Files. What if I click image? Cursor. Arrowhead sketches. All right, so these are all of the images. No, it only allows me to pick one at a time. All right, since it's not going to allow me to pick all of them, I'm just going to delete all of them. The following images provide context. All right, in that case, I wonder if I could upload a document, a Google Doc for the images. So we're going to listen to this, and then at the same time, I'm going to upload some images into a Google Doc file.
Okay, I've reviewed the Development Strategy and Plan document. This brings everything together into an actionable starting point. Here's my understanding. 1. Development strategy. The project is broken down into manageable sub-projects, with the immediate focus being project, core MVP development. 2. Competitive edge. The application aims to differentiate through its niche focus, new, mid-level managers, specific guided methodology, and simplicity compared to larger platforms. 3. Planning insights. You've applied the app's own vision and brainstorm techniques to its development, generating useful insights for strategy and execution. 4. Sprint 1 Foundations and Authentication. Objective. Establish foundational infrastructure and authentication. Goal. Set up core infrastructure, database, models, and implement basic user registration, login, scoreboard. A detailed list of tasks covering technology choices, cloud, DB, auth, setup, hosting, DB instance, design, schemas, models, implementation, migrations, auth logic, API endpoints, session management, and repository initialization. How this translates to coding. This document moves us from planning into execution. The Sprint 1 scoreboard provides the immediate backlog of coding and infrastructure tasks. We have concrete goals and a list of steps to achieve them. The references to the link to .png files will be helpful as we build UI components later, but the current focus is on the backend and infrastructure defined in Sprint 1. Next steps. We're ready to start coding. Based on the Sprint 1 scoreboard, the logical first steps involve making some key technology decisions. How about we start by discussing Task 1, choose primary cloud provider. Or, if you have preferences already, we could move to select database type or define initial database schemas, models. Let me know which task from the Sprint 1 scoreboard you'd like to tackle first.
All right, I'm just going to see if I can paste in this file. Add from Drive. What? I could just add all of these from Drive one by one? All right. Dang it. Where is it? Arrowhead MVP? I think maybe it's an Arrowhead MVP. Yeah, here it is. All right. Now I just added this images file. Let's insert this images file. Okay, that's interesting. So maybe I wonder if I can do something different with uploading those files. Wow, my computer's hot. This is the first time I've ever felt my computer being hot before. Interesting. Okay, I have access. I can see the images you provided. All right, now the last one is the difference between what we did last time and this time. So this time, we're going to add this additional context, which helps us to understand what we did in the past. Work context and process guidelines. So this is the difference between the last test and this test. Well, in addition, I also added those images. So we have an images file, and then we also have a context file. Let's see what this does.
Understood. I have processed the final context document, Working Context and Process Guidelines. This document provides valuable meta information for our collaboration. 1. Roles. It clearly defines your multifaceted role: PM, designer, owner, user proxy, needing guidance, and my role as a flexible coding partner, encompassing aspects of a business analyst, architect, Scrum Master Assistant, developer assistant, and co-project manager, guide. 2. Core process, VOS TBC. It establishes the crucial principle that we will use the application's own methodology: vision, objective, scoreboard, touchbase, brainstorm, choose, to structure and manage its development. My responsibility is to actively facilitate this by maintaining context of the current project and objective, proactively suggesting brainstorm and choose for planning and decision-making, using objective and scoreboard to define work, employing touch-based concepts for tracking progress. 3. Rationale. It explains the reasoning behind key decisions like the multi-project structure, deliberate practice, competitive positioning, simplicity, methodology focus, and the primary use case, manager's structured thinking tool. 4. AI, coding helper interaction. It clarifies that I will assist by preparing detailed prompts for external AI coding tools and helping analyze their outputs, with you acting as the intermediary. 5. Documentation. It confirms the structure of the documentation provided, the 4 core files plus this process file, and the tools used: Notion, G-Docs, Markdown. I understand these guidelines and the importance of adhering to our defined process. I will strive to be the proactive, guiding partner you need, actively facilitating the VOS TBC framework throughout our work on this project. I will keep track of our current focus. Project, core MVP development. Objective, establish foundational infrastructure and authentication. With the full context from all 5 documents and the visual aids now established, I'm ready to begin. Let's tackle the first step in Sprint 1. Which task from the scoreboard would you like to address first? Options include: 1. Choose primary cloud provider. 2. Select database type, e.g., SQL, NoSQL. 3. Define initial database schemas, models, users, projects, module instances, scoreboard tasks. 4. Choose authentication strategy, e.g., email, password, OAuth. 5. Initialize code repository, Git, with basic project structure. Let me know where you'd like to start.
All right, so I just created a project test in the other window. So let's go. I'm just gonna let it do the test. I don't really need to go too into detail about the test because everything we listen to it, go through everything. From my understanding of the project, which I've been working on for 10 years, sounds good, sounds fine. So now I just want to get the feedback from the first window to make sure that the first window thinks that everything's fine. And I mean, I feel like everything's fine. I feel like even if it lost some of the details, like it didn't talk about ClickUp. It didn't talk about plugging in some AI functions. It didn't talk about some of the brainstorming ideas that we had, which is fine. You're always going to lose some. You can't keep everything. All right, so let's jump into where I created the test. Just going to click enter and let's see how well it did on the test. Now there's one last thing that I want to do, which is not really in this. Select all. How do I select all? Here it is. Copy. Okay. Let's see what it's got to say.
Thank you for running the test and sharing the detailed responses from the newly primed Gemini window. Wow, these answers are outstanding. Let's quickly evaluate them against our established context. 1. Overall synthesis. Perfect summary of the workflow from start to finish. 2. Rationale connection. Deliberate practice. Correctly explained the link to the multi-project development structure. 3. Workflow detail. OST link. Accurately detailed the data flow and the specific touchbase questions driving scoreboard updates. 4. Module process. Choose. Perfectly listed the 5 steps involved in the choose module. 5. UI functionality. History. Correctly described its purpose, content, and likely actions. 6. Strategic context. Project breakdown. Accurately listed the 5 projects and their focus areas. 7. Strategic context. Differentiation. Correctly identified avoided complexities and linked the focus on simplicity to the core strategy. 8. Collaborative process, AI, role guidance. Perfectly captured the expected AI behavior when technical uncertainty arises, including using the modules. 9. Collaborative process, tracking progress. Accurately described using Touchbase for monitoring and updating the scoreboard. 10. Detailed recall, Sprint 1 tasks. Correctly listed 5 tasks from the Sprint 1 plan. 11. Detailed recall, brainstorm structure. Correctly listed the 5 brainstorm sections. 12. Detailed recall, scoreboard columns. Correctly listed the 4 scoreboard columns. 13. Future scope, implied. Made logical and accurate inferences about potential post-MVP features. 14. Workflow, edge case blocked task. Provided an excellent, accurate description of how the workflow accommodates blocked tasks using Touchbase and potentially brainstorm, choose. Conclusion. This is excellent news. The new Gemini instance, working solely off the 5 Markdown documents you provided, demonstrated a deep and accurate understanding of essentially every facet of our project that we've discussed and documented. It correctly recalled high-level strategy, specific details, workflow logic, our intended collaborative process, and even handled edge case questions accurately. This strongly indicates that our 5-document documentation strategy is effective and robust for preserving context and allowing us to continue our work seamlessly, even in a new session. With this successful test completed, we can proceed with confidence. The next logical step remains discussing and deciding on the specific technologies, cloud provider, database, backend language, framework, authentication strategy, needed to start executing the tasks for Sprint 1, Foundations and Authentication. Are you ready to tackle those technology choices now?
All right, so, well, there's two things that I want to talk to you about before we continue. One thing is that I used a Google product recently and I was able to create the app. And then after losing the access to the API, it downgraded the AI coding helper inside of the AI coding tool. The AI coding tool is called Firebase Studio. It's similar to Cursor, Windsurf, and Replit. And so suddenly, although it was able to correctly create the software application, and none of the other tools were able to do so. Once I was downgraded, it made some mistakes and eventually deleted the entire front end. And all I have left is the database from that project. So I have two thoughts. One thought is I can copy and paste the database structure from that project, and we can start to build off of that database structure. You can provide your thoughts about whether that is a good structure or a bad structure or where it needs to change. Or we can start from scratch and just recreate or start over again and create a rough framework for the sprints that are going to be needed for this project, and then build the project step by step and allow the database to be built step by step with each successive sprint.
That sounds like a frustrating experience with the previous AI tool deleting the front end. It's good that you still have the database structure from it, though. It gives us a clear decision point for how to proceed with the database for our Management Guidance App MVP. You've laid out the two main options very clearly. 1. Reuse existing database structure. You provide the schema from your previous project, and we analyze, critique, and potentially adapt it for our current application's needs. 2. Start database from scratch, iterative design. We design the database schema based purely on the requirements we have defined together for this application, building it up iteratively as we progress through the sprints. Let's consider the trade-offs. Reusing. Potential pro. Could save some initial design time if the previous app was very similar and the schema is well suited. Potential cons. We might inherit design choices that aren't optimal for this specific app's workflow or future plans. We could spend significant time understanding and potentially fixing or heavily modifying the existing structure. There's a risk of carrying over assumptions or flaws from the previous context. Starting fresh, iterative. Potential pros. Guarantees the database schema perfectly aligns with the features, modules, and workflow we have meticulously defined. Follows agile principles. We build the necessary parts for each sprint. Ensures a clean design tailored specifically to this app. Provides clarity as we build the models alongside the features that require them. Potential cons. Doesn't leverage the potentially completed work from the previous project. Might feel like slightly more design work up front for the initial sprints, though likely cleaner overall. My recommendation. Given that we've spent considerable time defining the specific modules, workflow, and structure for this unique application, I would generally recommend option 2, starting the database design from scratch and building it iteratively. Why? Tailored design. It ensures the database perfectly serves the needs of this application's unique methodology and structure. Cleanliness. We avoid inheriting any potential issues or suboptimal designs from the previous project or AI process. Alignment with sprints. It fits perfectly with our plan for Sprint 1, which already includes the task, define initial database schemas, models. We can define just what's needed for authentication, projects, and perhaps basic module task tracking initially, and evolve it in later sprints as we implement more features. Clarity. Building it step by step ensures we both understand the rationale behind the schema as it grows. While reusing might seem faster initially, starting fresh often leads to a better, more maintainable, and more accurately fitting foundation in the long run, especially when the previous context isn't fully known or trusted. However, the final decision is yours as the project manager. What are your thoughts? Would you prefer to start fresh and design the database iteratively based on our defined requirements, or would you like to provide the existing structure for review first?
If I provide the existing structure for review, can I also roll back and remove that from your memory? All right, I'm going to show you the database, and I want you to think about the pros and cons of using this database. All right, so what I can do obviously is I can just go back up here and I can then click, can't I click this one, double check, export to? No, I can't roll back actually. What if I click this page? Oh, that didn't work. Download vision. Yeah, so expand the text and then go to the, so you can't do it in Gemini. In ChatGPT, you can actually go back to a previous chat and then you can edit it. Anyways, this is the last thing I wanted to do today. So let's just have a little chat and see what it says.
Okay, I have reviewed the PostgreSQL database schema definition you provided. Overall, this is a well-designed and comprehensive schema that accurately reflects most of the entities and relationships we've discussed for the Management Guidance app. It clearly handles users, projects, the different module instances, and the necessary task tracking for the scoreboard. The inclusion of specific tables for managing display order, user project display order, project module display order, directly addresses the UI requirements we talked about. The use of foreign keys with on-delete cascade and the updated underscore at triggers are good practices. Let's break down the pros and cons of using this specific schema for our MVP project. Pros. Comprehensive coverage. It defines tables for all core entities, users, projects, module instances, project modules, module-specific data storage, e.g., vision module data, scoreboard tasks, and even user-defined project module ordering. Structured relationships. Uses foreign keys effectively to link related data, user to projects, project to modules, module to specific data, module to scoreboard tasks. Handles UI requirements, explicitly includes tables, user project display order, project module display order, to manage the custom sorting features requested for the project and module history lists. Good practices, incorporates standard practices like primary keys, foreign keys, appropriate indexes for common lookups, and automatic updated underscore at timestamp management. Extensibility foundation, the structure with separate module data tables and the generic module instance table, project modules, provides a reasonable foundation. Cons. Potential MVP over engineering. Some elements, while nicely designed, might add complexity beyond what's strictly necessary for the initial MVP launch. Drop-down options table. The system for user-defined, colored drop-down options, starting with scoreboard_status, is quite flexible but adds significant implementation complexity compared to using a simple predefined list or a basic enum type for statuses in the MVP. Deferrable constraints. Using deferrable initially deferred on the unique position constraints in the ordering tables is powerful for complex reordering logic but might be overkill and potentially harder to manage than standard constraints for basic MVP reordering. Optional fields. Several optional fields: display_name, first_name, last_name, profile_picture_URL in users, description in projects, layout_preference in project modules, could potentially be deferred post-MVP to keep the initial schema leaner. Minor points. The scoreboard tasks. Person field is a varchar, not directly linked to the users table via a foreign key. This is simpler but less relationally sound long-term, though potentially acceptable for MVP. The scoreboard tasks. Status relies on the complex drop-down options or stores a raw string. A simpler enum might be better for MVP if drop-down options is deferred. Recommendation. This schema is a very strong starting point. It's much better than starting completely from scratch, as it already incorporates thoughtful solutions for most requirements, especially the ordering logic. I recommend we adopt this schema as our base, but consider making a few simplifications specifically for the MVP to reduce initial development complexity and focus on the core workflow. 1. Simplify status. For the MVP, replace the drop-down options dependency for scoreboard tasks, status. Either use a simple varchar 50 column and manage allowed values, not assigned, in.
All right, so this is out of the scope of today's video. So it looks like we made a lot of progress this week, and we'll see you next week.